Welcome to the Customer Wins podcast, where business leaders discuss their secrets and techniques for helping their customers succeed and in turn grow their business.
Hi, I'm Rich Walker, the host of the Customer Wins, where I talk to business leaders about how they help their customers win and how their focus on customer experience leads to growth. Today is a special episode in my series on artificial intelligence, and some of our past guests in this series have included Wealth.io, Jiffy AI, Govern GPT, and several others. Today's guest is Daniel Yoo, the founder of FinMate AI. And today's episode is brought to you by Quick, the leader in enterprise forms processing. When your business relies upon processing forms, don't waste your team's valuable time reviewing the forms. Instead, get Quick. Using our Form Extract API, simply submit your completed forms and get back clean, context-rich data that is 99.9% accurate. Visit quickforms.com to get started. And before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Joe Moss at Pro Advisor Suite for creating the connection between Daniel and I. Check out Joe's episode on this podcast and learn all about proadvisorsuite.com. All right, now to meet our guest. Daniel is the founder of FinMate AI, the only AI note-taking assistant designed by financial advisors for financial advisors. He holds 2 bachelor's degrees from UC Berkeley in economics, as well as molecular cell biology, development genetics, as well as a master's of science from Johns Hopkins in applied economics, focusing on using machine learning and AI for asset price predictions. Daniel currently maintains his FINRA series licenses as well. Daniel has spent the first 7 years of his career working as a financial advisor for major firms such as Equitable, TD Ameritrade, and Schwab before transitioning over to lead operations and product in FinTech. He has since combined his experiences in the advisor space as well as the tech space to develop tools useful for the financial advisor community. Daniel, welcome to the Customer Wins.
Thank you, Rich. Good to see you again.
You as well. So look, if you haven't heard this podcast before, I like to talk to business leaders about what they're doing to help their customers win, how they built and deliver a great customer experience, and the challenges to growing their own company. Daniel, let's understand your business a little better. How does your company help people?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that people come to use FinMate for is mainly the time savings as well as the mind share savings. And I'll break those down into its individual components here. When I was an advisor, one of the biggest issues I had was taking notes as well as organizing notes in a fashion that I could use later on to develop my financial plan and further interactions with the client. And so by my estimation, with about a full week's worth of meetings, I would be spending about 4 to 5 hours per week on those notes and those organizations. And so I wanted to create something that can help save advisors that time. But it's not only the time saved. What I found was that I had a harder time engaging with the client and really listening to my clients if I had focused on taking notes instead of just being present. And so I wanted to give that gift to advisors. And I wish this is something I had back when I was an advisor. And so I think that's kind of how we want to help advisors win, is to really take their mind off of note-taking, off of the operations, and really be present for the clients.
I love that. So I got to tell you a funny story. In my 20s, I worked at Arthur Andersen, and I'd go to meetings with the senior leader of the team, the partner, whoever it was. And I was supposed to take notes, but I didn't think about that because in my head, I could record it all just to hear, because I wasn't talking, I wasn't engaging, I was just present. So I'm taking all these notes in my head. Oh my gosh, I got yelled at so many times for not taking good notes. And even today, I find that to be a really difficult thing, because what tool do you go to? I was using a plugin to Chrome for a while, Notepad, Microsoft OneNote years ago. And so what you're really talking about is the challenge of how do you stay present in the conversation and engaging and also take notes. That is so hard to do. So how does your product solve that problem then?
Sure. So I will say there are plenty of generic alternatives to our platform out there. Great companies like Fireflies and Brain and folks like that. The issue that I had was when I had used these tools during my time in FinTech, the notes were very generic and were not specific. And the data privacy was a little bit questionable because of this new technology. And so the reason I started FinMate AI was because I wanted to tailor make all of the features to be truly useful specifically for the advisor community and not necessarily just shoehorn in general sales tools for the advisors. And so I guess to get very specific, what we do is we have different formats for these notes depending on the kind of meetings that advisors run. So typically, you have the advisors running introductory or discovery meetings, you have the annual or quarterly review meetings, you have vendor calls, you have center of influence calls, things like that. And so we're trying to really develop these modules to tackle those individual kinds of meetings and then create additional tooling to help advisors maybe train some of their junior advisors or do some call reviews with some behavioral things that are coming down the pipeline.
So it's not simply an AI like Zoom has AI now, and I've used
Correct.
several of them like Assembly and Fathom, where they
Yep.
listen to the call and they give you a transcript, maybe some action items,
Yep.
some things like that. But you're doing more than that, right? You're making
Correct.
it specific to a type of conversation. Does that mean your AI is interpreting the conversation then?
Correct. So there's a layer of interpretation and a layer of, let's say, guardrailing, where we have the AI focus on specific areas. For example, during the discovery meeting, that's a lot. That's a meeting where a lot of data is getting transferred from the client to the advisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at least in my practice, that was my chance to then create a initial financial plan, Money Guide Pro, eMoney, what have you, asset map, which I've used throughout my career. The notes I want for that kind of meeting are very, very different than the notes I want for a review meeting where I want details about what are their personal updates, what are their taxes from this past year look like, do they have any concerns about their investments? And so because each meeting has a very different purpose, I felt like a generic note taker was not sufficient. And then to also piggyback off of that, we help generate a response email to the client where it gives you a quick summary of what they talked about during the meeting, the advisor's to-dos, and of course the client's to-dos, because every nudge helps move the sale along.
Okay, so I got a couple of questions about this, but first of all, it
Please.
sounds like if you're doing a discovery meeting, the AI is more attuned to financial numbers, net worth, liquid investments, those types of questions.
Correct.
Whereas in the ongoing meetings, it's more sentiment, it's more behavior, like what are your fears or what's happened or what's new.
Right. So the review meeting is very much focusing on updates, right? So, what is your work or business updates from the past time we talked? How are your investments doing? Do you have any changes to your retirement or financial goals, right? What are your motivations? Much more focused on that. Whereas the discovery is, what are your liquid assets? What are your illiquid assets? Where is your liabilities? What's your insurances? And very much helping the advisor build out that initial financial plan.
So here's something else that happens. I feel like if you're really good at active listening, when you're done with the conversation can feel like a blur because you were so in the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being a performer on stage. It's like, what just happened? I just finished.
Right.
And the notes, I'm sure, fill that gap. But do you feel like this enables advisors to recall and actually ingest more information better?
I find that when I personally use it for my own meetings now, my short-term memory is a lot more active because I'm not so concerned about writing things down or thinking about what to write down. I can just focus in on, okay, this is an important piece of information that I need to bring up in a later part of the conversation. And so I do believe that reducing this burden helps with the short-term memory because our brains only have so much capacity to hold things at once.
Yeah. Well, do you also think that it's helping advisors see things they didn't catch?
Mm. I think so. The interesting thing is we do have an audio video recording that we show in the bottom right corner. It's very useful, I think, especially for video calls. So we also have an app available for in-person meetings, which is audio only, but for at least for video calls, I think you can miss certain micro expressions if you're split focused too much. And so because you can just focus in on your conversation partner, your client, you can really try to dig into what they're feeling not just by their words, but by paying attention to their facial expressions.
Man, when I discover companies like yours and your product, I think, okay, the bar keeps going higher and higher for my advisor. Like they have to do all these things. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm getting enough value.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, we're coming out with some behavioral things that are kind of in the wraps. So we're working with some psychologists and folks in the BFI space to really help the advisor understand the psychology and the motivations and their philosophy of money. And so we're hoping that this can help elevate financial advisors to the next tier.
Yeah, that's great. So let's go back to something else you had brought up. You said you didn't think the other AI note takers were as secure as perhaps you needed them to be. What
Mhm.
is the challenge with security with artificial intelligence products?
So AI is trained on data, right? And so the more data people have access to, the more powerful the AI. So what a lot of these companies are doing is they are monetizing the data that clients give them by training their AI.
Okay.
We do not want to do that, mainly because I understand as a financial advisor, that can get very hairy. And
Mm.
there's been some high profile lawsuits already on the books because of this improper use of training data taken from clients. So for us, our security, our data policies, they're all set to delete client data after a certain expiration period that the client set. And so if you want them deleted pretty much immediately, you can do so. If you want to keep it for 6 months, you can do so. But at the end of the day, this is your data, and I have no interest in taking it and repackaging it and training our AI ourselves.
So what did you train it on then?
So the training is based on my personal experiences and the different nudges and guardrails we put in, and then we layer multiple promptings of the AI, and so it's trained on a general data set. And I'm sure as these bigger corporations such as Google, Microsoft, and Apple, uh, and OpenAI, of course, get better and better, we'll just be taking advantage of the advances they make.
Got it. Okay. So that answers another question about how you're going to continually make it better. Does the customer's data get used to train a private model for them, or is it just simply data that is not kept, not
It's
used?
not kept, yeah. Again, we do not want to be your data repository. So what I've told clients is you have your CRM, that's what they're there for. You have
Yeah.
your Dropboxes or your boxes, that's what your long-term data storage is for. We just want to help you get client notes, insights about the clients, maybe a quick follow-up letter, just save you some time. And so let's use the tools that are appropriate.
Yeah, right. No, that's awesome. So going back to behavior, you said you're going to put out some capabilities, products, features, I'm not sure which,
Mhm.
related to behavior. What is it about behavior you're trying to capture and help advisors with?
Yeah, there's a couple dimensions that we're looking at. Obviously, this is pretty on the cutting edge, and so there's a lot more testing that we need to do, and I can't go into too much detail. Um, but we're trying to identify the client's personality traits, their behavioral patterns, just so number one, the advisor knows how to relate to individual clients better, because based on their personality, things that make them tick are different. And also to kind of uncover their philosophy of money, their history with money, their upbringing, things like that, that will really help shape that advisor-client relationship.
So after 3 years of working with me, my advisor's going to say, Rich, every December you come up with the same fear.
That's the hope. And so they can maybe predict and even give you a call before it happens.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. So maybe it's even predictive to help the advisor be a step ahead, which actually I think speaks to one of the biggest challenges advisors have of like, what is your reason for being in front of your client? And
Right,
how do you stay in front of them all the time?
right.
Newsletters only go so far. They're important, obviously, but to have points of meaning. We had Philip Hecker from Bento Engine talking about these
Mm,
points in life. Do you know
yeah.
him?
No, I'm familiar with Bento Engine.
Yeah, so they're talking about like all these different events in life that come up that you
Yeah.
should drive a conversation with. I
Mhm.
wonder if you would start looking at that, maybe partner with a company like that to even offer some of those reflections ahead of time too.
That would be a fun thing to work on. We've been behind the scenes working on a lot of integrations with a lot of different advisor tech focused companies. I can shout out Ross Marino for his Human First conference happening in March. That's very much focused on the behavioral finance piece. So yeah, if you want to connect, happy to connect on
That's
anything.
awesome. No, that's totally awesome. So let me ask you a question because you have learned machine learning and AI. I mean, you took courses on this,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
What do you think the average person doesn't understand about AI that you find kind of amazing or interesting or
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, I guess, number one, there's different kinds of AIs, right? So the big explosion that happened last year was with LLMs or large language models.
Mhm.
My area of focus was unfortunately not LLMs, it was uh, asset price predictions, right? And so predicting numbers from a pattern. And the fun thing about that is AI, all the different models, random forest, stochastic gradient descent, all of these newfangled models uh, don't actually perform that well compared to some very old tech. I think like 1970s. It's called the ARIMA model, auto regression integrated moving average model, which is a lot cheaper to run. But unfortunately, that piece of AI hasn't quite exceeded expectations. And so the LLMs actually is the part that took off. And so I think what people understand is kind of the differences. And on a basic level, it's just statistics. It's just a lot of statistics using a lot of computing power, and that's all it is.
No, I love that. I love that because I started looking at AIs a long time ago, but not at the level you are. I was just saying, would this help my business? Could it help my customers? I saw DALL-E come out with image generation. I was like, oh my gosh, that was April of a year and a half ago, I think. And then when ChatGPT came out at the end of 22, I was blown away, like everybody. And then this spurred so much talk. Everybody's now an AI company. Everybody's got an AI product. It's almost a bad word in some ways.
Yeah.
You've got it in your name, though. You guys
Yep.
are so confident about its power.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yes. I mean, that's kind of the core of the company is this new tech, and we're trying to find ways to wrangle it into the advisor space. One of the great laments I had while a financial advisor was the lack of alacrity in which financial companies took up new tech. And so I was hoping that because of my background, I can actually develop things very, very applicable for the advisor space.
Yeah. So you're focused on the conversation the advisor's having with their client. Do you foresee AI preempting the conversation?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think there's been some developments in different tech spaces. I think Orion is coming out with an AI that helps folks tailor their messaging based on certain events and their personalities. And so I think there will come a time when there's going to be very deep integration within CRM systems that can help preempt these conversations. But I think a lot of these will be pretty generalistic to begin with. So birthdays, anniversaries, kind of things that people already know to reach out for. I think it'll just help optimize that. I think really getting deep into anticipating client conversations will only happen if the client's psychology is really well understood, because people react to the same events differently.
So I want to ask you another question. Before I ask it, I'm thinking about how your product plays in the sense that if I'm the advisor and now I'm fully focused on the client conversation, do you think there's a chance the client's going to say, you're not taking notes? Like, are you really paying attention to me?
Well, mainly because in most states, there is a two-party consent of recording. Most advisors do let the clients know, like, hey, we're using this AI tool so that I can focus more on you at the beginning of every conversation. And so after a while, I think the clients will understand, like, hey, yes, this note taker is there. I know what it's doing, and I know why my advisor is just looking at me the whole time.
Yeah. So do you know, I don't know this. I really don't know. Are there advisors who have an assistant who does the note taking? And would your
Correct.
product actually displace that person's need to be the note taker?
So usually those people, their title is a paraplanner, and so they do more than just note taking, right? They do a lot of the initial financial planning prep and things like that. And so I've talked to a couple of my old advisor friends who say like, hey, like paraplanners are our bottleneck. And so not necessarily because of their note taking, but because of everything else that follows after the note taking. And
Right.
so what I am trying to do is not to cut paraplanner jobs. It's just to say, hey, this really, really tedious part of your job, you don't need to do that anymore. Let's focus you on the client experience for your financial advisor clients, generating better financial plans and having better customer support.
I mean, I know personally, even if I've had AIs helping me, I still take some notes because there's certain things that are just, they're keyed in your head that tie to something that you want to, look at later, talk about, whatever. So I'm sure there's still that happening, even though your product is making it like capture everything.
Yes.
So let me take this to a different level because again, my interest in AI and you're in the AI space. Have you seen products that allow you to replicate yourself as an avatar? There's a company called HeyGen that can take your video and translate it to other languages. There's like sales error, I think AI for sales, which is more audio than visual. But I'm just wondering, do you think any of these visual AIs will get in use in financial advisor space to start
Visual
taking on
AI.
these meetings?
Interesting. Um, I can see that potentially happening with the mass market. I don't necessarily see that happening with high net worth.
Yeah.
clients or ultra high net worth clients. The reason those folks, everyone can invest themselves given enough study, right? The financial advisor is there to be, their helper, their listener, their advisor, right? They're not just there to kind of give you rote pieces of information. And so my opinion on that is I think people are coming to advise for that human touch. And so I think it'll be pretty hard pressed for people to be okay with a AI facsimile.
So you're not going to say, hey, have my AI talk to your AI and come back and tell us what happened.
I can see that happening in like maybe business to business conversations, but definitely not for something so human centric as and deeply human and as kind of the concept of money
Yeah.
for in people's lives.
So, there's not a lot of advisors. I mean, there's
Mhm.
definitely some, not a lot of advisors who then say, I'm going to become a technologist
Mhm.
and go into this tech field. And I understand the desire to help other advisors, but
Mhm.
what was that catalyst for you that said, I'm going to be better off building a fintech company than being an advisor still?
Well, so background on my education is I've been coding since elementary school, so I do have a background in technology, and I just liked working with people more than sitting in front of a computer just making code. And so that's why I didn't pursue technology initially and moved into the financial advisor space.
Yeah.
And so I've always had that background, and I remember some conversations early on in my financial advisor career, just asking some folks up the chain in my company, like, hey, if you guys have like a incubator space, like let me help you build better tools because the tools we're using look like they're from the 80s. Um,
And they
you
are.
know, and they are right. And I still remember this one holiday where I had to cover a branch of our offices because the manager was out for holidays, and we were faxing forms for Roth conversions at the end of the year. And because there's no direct feedback to me that the fax machine was working or was not working, I come back in the New Year's and find out the fax had only sent half the forms.
Oh
And
my God.
so now I have to help, draft IRS letters explaining like, hey, this is our company screw up. It wasn't the, please forgive for the, our client, like, please help them, process this Roth conversion properly. Right. And so there's been a lot of frustrations in my personal practice of technology being a limiting factor. And so I figured because I have a tech background, I might as well use that for good purposes.
And that is a familiar story. I mean, at least for me, and I think for other advisors who became technologists as well. Back in the 90s, I worked at Payne Weber. And I
Mm,
remember the old Bloomberg machine with the very special buttons to do things. And I was able to get articles off the Bloomberg as text. I
mm,
dropped it into Word, and I'm like, I don't like the format of this article to send out to a client.
yeah.
And the advisor I worked for didn't either. So I ended up writing a macro in Word that would format the headline and the byline and the date and all these things. And all I had to do is click a button and boom, in about 2 seconds, the whole thing was formatted.
Mhm.
That's what led me to tech. That's what made me think, wow, we could make things so much faster and
Yeah.
easier for people.
Yeah.
But I still loved finance. I still
Yeah.
loved what we were doing with our
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I still maintain my licenses. This is why, I enjoy being in this space. This is what I've known my entire career. And so,
So do you
but
still have clients?
so currently my licenses are in the dormant state that the FINRA just released. Actually, my thesis advisor at Hopkins worked for FINRA, and he was like, "Hey, just to let you know, like this is coming on the pipe. You should definitely apply for this 5-year dormancy period." And so,
Oh,
yeah, so actually, it was a very serendipitous meeting with my professor at Hopkins.
yeah, I had to let my licenses go.
Mm,
But truthfully, I wanted to because I realized I could do way better helping more advisors help more people than me just helping the individuals that I worked with. So that's the other thing I really love about tech.
mhm,
Um, so let's see. Do you think that with behavioral stuff, AI
mhm.
is the answer to make it happen, or are there other ways to approach the problems?
I see. No, in general, I think AI isn't a replacement for anything. It's a cheap, quick substitute for a lot of things. So paraplanners are really, really good at their job. Will take better notes than I can tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Uh, Psychologists, like financial therapists, will be a better judge of people than anything we develop, and I can tell you that right now. But we want to make these avenues available for folks who don't necessarily have access to a absolutely wonderful paraplanner or have access to financial therapists, but still want to provide a great customer experience for their clients. And so, no, I don't think it'll replace them anytime soon.
Yeah. No, that's good. I don't either. I really think AI is helping people move up in skills. and to focus on what's more important. We have a new product coming out called Form Extract,
Hmm.
and it eliminates the need to look at forms and type data into systems. And originally, when I was putting this together, I thought there must be a bunch of data entry people who just do this job. And as I talked to all my customers, no, none of them have data entry people. They have high value operational people, directors of compliance and operations, and people doing trades who are like, oh, I'm missing this piece of data. I got to go look at the form and I've got to type it in because the systems out there just aren't accurate enough to push the data through. So, I mean, you're taking somebody who's making $40, $50, $60 an hour and telling them go type data for a living.
Yeah.
So I don't think AI is going to replace them. No way.
No, no.
Help them
They'll
do what
just
they're
go
good
do
at.
more important things.
Yeah. So let's see. When did you start your company? I'm going to ask you the question of how long you've been doing this.
Sure. So our company started in 2022. We had a couple of pivots in our product, all mostly in the financial and investment space. And because of the rising interest rates, one of our previous projects wasn't working out because it was very much based on an income investing, democratizing income investing. But with higher interest rates, it kind of doesn't make sense anymore. And so I was playing through kind of like my past experience in FinTech, and I remember a lot of this AI note-taking tools, and I was thinking, hey, this doesn't quite fit advisors' use cases. So I called up, some of my old buddies at different RIAs and say, hey, I had this idea. Would you use this? And I gotten great responses, and so yeah, we started development about a year ago, I want to say, after pivoting for a little while. So the company's been around for about 2 years.
And how long has your product been used by customers now?
Product has been used by customers for, I want to say, about 9 months now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's one of your earliest success stories that you love to talk about?
One of the early success stories.
Or any success story. Because you were telling me something privately I think maybe we could talk about.
Oh, sure. Yeah. This was a use case that I had never thought of, but thanks to some connections, I think through Joe as well, I was introduced to a company where one of their advisors was paralyzed from the neck down. And so he had been using a voice recorder to dictate his notes after the meeting. And so he had to memorize all of this information during the meeting and then quickly blurt it out. And, he was telling me that there was a lot of stress in terms of making sure he had all the details memorized. And so when we heard that, we kind of rushed to create a lot of accessibility tools inside our platform. So ARIA labeling, so you can call out different buttons without having to kind of mouse over them and just reduce that mental burden for him. And so that was a really fun one.
Oh, that's incredible. That really is incredible. So you're making it possible for people to use your product to really help with a disability and alleviate the disability almost entirely. I'm not going to say that exactly, but
not exactly, but we're trying to help affiliate as much as possible. Yes.
But for that part of the process where they just can't do it, now they can, and they can do it better. I mean, I hope that's the outcome with this advisor and their team.
I hope so too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. I love hearing stuff like that. You're also an example of I think what a lot of entrepreneurs go through. You talked about pivot and making changes to your model because you're learning from your customers. But I have this kind of theory, and I want to see if you can bear it out with me a little bit.
Okay.
My theory is that it's easier to start a business today. I'm not saying easy, by the way.
Sure.
It's still hard to run a business and start one, but it's easier to start a business today because of the tools and technologies out there. Do you think AI is making it easier to start and build a company, especially a tech company?
100%. I think the example I like to give is back when I was in college, I used to code websites to sell to small businesses. And then things like Wix and Squarespace rolled out where it basically democratized the whole web building experience. And so you no longer needed to code. I think AI will eventually get to the point where there's already AIs out there helping software engineers code. And so once that gets sufficiently advanced enough, I'm sure there's going to be a natural language layer where people can just talk to their AI or type commands to the AI and have the AI code for them. And we've seen some beginnings of that where there's a lot of early prototype type tech companies coming out where the founder has said, I have no coding background. I just asked ChatGPT to do this for me. And it's worked. And I've talked to some students at UC Berkeley, for example, and they were saying that, like a lot of these coding problems are very easily solvable by current level AI. And so it's definitely coming where just like how normal people who couldn't code couldn't build websites, but now they can through all these wonderful tools like Squarespace and Wix. There's definitely a time coming when I think people will be able to build apps and tools without deep knowledge of coding.
So I don't know if you know this. My company is over 20 years old. We have some pretty legacy systems that we keep migrating forward and upgrading and refactoring, rebuilding. Do you think that we're going to have to rebuild from scratch with a no-code platform if we want to do no code?
I guess it depends on what direction you want to take the company. So the caveat to my previous statement about there not being much space left for web developers is there's no space for entry-level web developers because Squarespace and Wix are geared towards kind of that 80% middle market of websites. Yeah. If you're looking to do very niche or high-end things, you're still going to need someone very advanced in coding. And so I think the no-code platforms will be very useful for very simple tools, but I still see a space reserved for that very niche, hard to build products. And so from what I understand from your product, there's a lot of moving pieces. And so I don't necessarily think that no code might be the best direction, but I could be proven wrong.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, with AI is helping write the code, and you still need an architect and you still need a solution designer to help you figure out how you want things to work. I mean, we build APIs. They're very technical.
Yeah.
But then I work with somebody who's got a no-code platform and they consume our API like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
To me, that means we did the right thing. But at the same time, it's like, why is it so easy for you?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I couldn't sell websites anymore. But I guess that's just how business rolls forward.
Yeah. Daniel, I really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm going to have to wrap this up. But before I do, I have another question. Before I ask that, what is the best way for people to find you and connect with you?
Great question. Our website is called FinMate.ai, so FINMATE.ai. On the website, there's plenty of buttons I put in there for contacting me. You can book a time with me. Happy to chat with you about our product, our platform, or any kind of integration or partnerships. And so feel free to reach out there. We do have a chat function there where you can reach our team as well. That probably would be the best place.
Awesome. Yeah, please reach out to Daniel. He's really good to talk to. All right, so here's my last question. Who has had the biggest impact on your leadership style or how you approach your role?
Yeah, I would have to give two names for this. These are folks that I would consider my startup mentors. John Saddington, who was the co-founder of a code academy type thing before it got popular, called the Iron Yard. And the other one would be Holly Liu, who was a co-founder of Kabam. And so both folks have been very much encouraging me to pursue startups ever since I graduated college, and were very upset that I was sticking around in finance for this long. So I would have to say it's probably those two.
If your mentors see your potential before you do, you got to listen.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll be very happy that I finally made the jump.
That's awesome. Well, I hope they hear this and can give you that congratulations, because you made a huge leap.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to give a huge thank you to Daniel Yoo, founder of FinMate AI, for being on this episode of The Customer Wins. Go check out Daniel's website at finmate.ai. And don't forget to check out Quick at quickforms.com, where we make processing forms easier. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. We'll click the like button, share this with someone, and subscribe to our channels for future episodes of The Customer's Win. Thanks for joining me today, Daniel.
For the last second, if you don't mind, I just want to give one more shout out to Dan Solon. He's a best-selling author. He's coming out with a new book in April called Wealthier. He writes in the advisor space. He was the one that really picked up our product very early on and brought us to everyone's attention, helped us get on the Kids' list, things like that. So shout out to Dan. Check out his book, Wealthier book, and coming out in April. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Wins podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.